at a message from the Bible today that is one of the most important things that the Bible talks about. It's a topic that is covered from cover to cover, but it is not something that we necessarily also might want to think about too much. It's one of the harder things in the Bible. See, because God has a lot to tell us because he loves us, and out of love, he warns us and he has negative things to tell us. The Bible covers literally everything about life, and there's a lot of hard subjects. A lot of things in the Bible are bad news, or things correcting us and things telling us about bad things. And one of the most important subjects in the Bible is the topic of hell. From the beginning in Genesis all the way to the end in the book of Revelation, over and over again, everywhere in between, the Bible tells us an awful lot about this subject. And we can't, because of this, look at everything. And what we want to look at something that the Bible talks about specifically today, we can look at one aspect of it. The Bible says in Psalms 55:23, "But thou, O God, shalt bring them down into the pit of destruction. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in thee. But thou, O God, shalt bring them down into the pit of destruction." The title of the sermon is "The Pit of Destruction." The pit of destruction. The Bible gives us a lot of details about what hell is like, because he wants to warn us about it. Like, he wants us to know why it's so bad that we would avoid it. You know, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The Bible tells us it's the beginning of knowledge. That if you're wise, if you're a smart person, the right reaction to judgment and the fact that God is there and that we have a judge, that we would fear God and want to get right with him, that we would seek God and have salvation. The right response, or the wise response, would be to fear God and to be saved as a result of that. So the fear of God, of judgment, or the fact that we have hell to face after death, is something that is what the Bible tells us about this in order for us to be saved. The reason the Bible talks so much about this is that somebody would learn about it and be afraid of that and say, "Oh, I don't want that," and they would seek God and be saved. That's why salvation is there, to save us from something. That's why Jesus is called our Savior, is because he's saving us from something, and this is what we would be saved from, going to hell. But the Bible calls it the pit of destruction. Now, it uses two words in the same phrase here that we can look at and learn about what this place is like. The word pit and destruction. It's a pit of destruction. The word pit is used over and over in the Bible. In Psalms 40 verse 2, it says, "He brought me up also out of an horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my goings." So we're saved from an horrible pit. It is that he wants us to know that when we look at the Bible and we're reading it, when we come across the subject of hell as it comes up, we can always be thankful to know that, you know, we're saved from this and we don't have to have this be a part of our lives. There's many reasons the Bible talks about this, but it should give us thanksgiving. You know, we just had Thanksgiving. The one thing we can be thankful for above anything else is our salvation. Not just that we're given heaven, but we're saved from hell. In Isaiah 14:15, the Bible says, "Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit." Thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Now, the Bible calls hell a pit over and over again. And it is something that, it was like you would throw something out, would be in a pit. Or it's like a waste place, or it's like a garbage bin. The pit, you might think in your mind of what is a pit, or what does that conjure up as far as what it looks like. A pit is like, you would think maybe it's some kind of a ravine, or some kind of deep hole somewhere that you would see. But the Bible gets more specific. In the book of Revelation, it calls it the bottomless pit. That hell is a bottomless pit. Well, how could a pit, or like you might think of that being a hole, have no bottom to it? Well, it says here that, "Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell." Over and over again, the Bible calls going to hell, when people go to hell, that they go down, that their feet would slide, or that they would be brought down into the earth. If you've learned, perhaps at some point in your life from public school teachers, or you might have seen it somewhere, that about the anatomy of the earth itself that we're standing on, that you might come across, there's a famous paintings of the earth as a diagram cut in half and then split open like you would cut an apple, and they describe how there's these layers. There's the crust of the earth, the mantle, and the two cores that they show that they think that they have an idea of that has a structure. And one thing about it is that it is from one side of the earth to the other, it is filled with magma or lava or molten metal. That the whole earth that we're standing on, what it is like a huge ball of fire that has a very thin crust over it that protects us, and that is a barrier between the heat of the inside of the earth, and it actually is the only thing that keeps us from that. That the entire earth, and we would notice this whenever something comes pouring out from deep parts of the earth, that would be like a volcano erupts. All that lava is coming from somewhere. It's coming from pressures way down in the earth. They're forcing this material up from way down in the earth, because what's down there is just that, lava and what the Bible calls brimstone, fire. That there's a literal place like this that's in the middle of the earth. And if you were to imagine somebody were to jump into the earth, like if you were to be able to make some kind of hole that you could drill all the way down, so through the earth, through the center, and come out the other side, and if somebody were to jump in this hole, what would happen with gravity is, because no matter what, the earth is a globe, and no matter where you're standing on the globe, gravity is pulling us in every direction into the earth itself. So if somebody's on the top of the earth one way, somebody's on the other side of the earth, they're all being pulled by gravity to the center of the earth. So if you were to drill a hole all the way through the earth, through the center and the other side, and someone were to jump into it, the person would fall in and reach velocity of how far you could, or excuse me, how fast you could possibly go. Like if you were to jump off a building, you would get faster and faster and faster and faster. But if you could just keep falling, eventually you would reach a certain speed. That's as far as you could fall. And if somebody did so into the earth, into this hole, they would fall and fall and fall and get faster. Eventually they'd reach that velocity, and they'd keep falling, free fall, all the way to almost where they come out, they'd pass the center of the earth falling, they'd almost reach the other side, and then they'd yo-yo back. And they'd begin to go back and forth until they eventually stop going so far. They'd be going back and forth towards the middle, and the middle of the earth is where gravity converges on itself, and it's chaotic. The center of the earth is just random gravity. Like if you've ever seen like a gyroscope, or that picture of Leonardo da Vinci put of the human standing in different positions with the circle around it. There's a machine where you can get inside of that you strap your legs and your arms into, and there's a circle, and then there's another circle in other directions, and it can just rotate you in every random direction. That's what being in the middle of the earth is like, because gravity is converged into one place. So that being said, the middle of the earth is a bottomless pit. If you were to throw something into the earth, there's no bottom once you get to the middle of it. Everything is converging on the same point, so there's no bottom. It's just chaos. Because the Bible warns us that there's no rest to the wicked, that they don't have any rest. That it likens into that verse we just read, that God set our feet upon a rock if you're saved. If you believe on Jesus Christ, the rock, your feet are on a rock. And God is likening this physical aspect to being saved. Because the adverse, or the opposite of that, if somebody was not saved, your feet are not on a rock, you're on quicksand, you're on moving ground, you're not on solid ground, because quite literally, if you were to die unsaved and go to hell, you would have nothing to stand on. It would just be no gravity. You would be literally falling perpetually forever. The Bible actually describes this in a story in the book of Numbers, where there was a time in history where somebody literally fell alive into hell. And we can read about it here in Numbers 16. In Numbers 16, starting in verse 28, the Bible reads, "And Moses said, Hereby ye shall know that the Lord hath sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of mine own mind." He's saying that he's not making this stuff up. This is from God. Moses is a messenger from God. If these men die the common death of all men, or if they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord hath not sent me. he's talking about these people that are false prophets, and he's saying, if they just die a natural death, then I'm lying. And he goes on to explain, but if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up, he's saying that this is how they're going to die. These people, these false prophets that Moses is talking to a big group of people, and there's these false prophets here, and he's saying that I'm lying if they just die a normal death. But if this special thing where God makes a miracle happens, then you know that I'm from God, and that what I'm saying is true. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up, and all that pertain unto them and their families, and they go down quick into the pit, then you shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that pertained unto Korah, and all their goods. They and all that pertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. So this was an extreme miracle that had never happened before. He starts off by saying the Lord will make a new thing. This is not something where like there was a cave under them, that the roof collapsed. This is a new thing that had never happened before. This is not like a mudslide or some kind of sinkhole opened up. You might have heard various places around the world, South America, that will have just these holes that appear, these gaps called sinkholes will appear. But this is not even that. This is saying that it opens all the way down to the pit, which is the center of the earth, or the core of the earth. The heart of the earth is the bottomless pit, or like a sphere or an apple would have a pit or a core. That pit, the bottomless pit where hell is, was actually accessed by opening up a hole that goes far enough that somebody could jump and go all the way down to hell while they're still alive. And obviously they died on the way down, but that's how they died. They went alive into the pit. God opened up hell itself. And this happens another time in the Bible. The Bible tells us in the book of Revelation that this will happen again someday in the future. All the things that it describes in the book of Revelation where, the wrath of God at the end of time is being poured out onto the earth. And it's culminated with all these big events, that all the curses that it describes with the trumpets and the vials of God's wrath. One of the things that happens is in Revelation 9, starting in verse 1. This is actually going to happen someday. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven upon the earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit. And there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. The bottomless pit, or hell itself, the center of the earth, is accessed by him opening it up. On the crust, or the surface of the earth itself, they opened the earth, and hell is accessed. And this is described like what would be a great volcano. It's like opening a furnace where there is a great heat and great fire. Like if you would imagine a great heat being accessed, and that weird like mirage effect that it casts on things, if you've ever seen something really hot, like a furnace door opened and all the smoke billowing out of it. It's describing that, and it says that it's such a big hole and with so much heat in there that the smoke of it covers the entire earth. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So it's like a great volcano where hell is accessed, and the smoke, the first thing that happens is the smoke that pours out covers the whole earth. And when the Bible talks about the earth being darkened in Revelation, where there's a great darkness, this is actually the cause of it. This is where the sun is blotted out on the whole entire half of the planet where the sun's out. It's blotted out by this great volcano that's just global. And the Bible explains how that, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. So something comes pouring out, these horrible locusts, these great bugs that are already in hell, that are in hell right now. They're under our feet. They're in hell, tormenting the people who go to hell. And when hell is accessed, they come rushing out. Like it's where, like you might have heard the expression where all hell broke loose. That's literally going to happen someday. And these crazy creatures, these, like you might have seen, maybe things like National Geographic, that God has created some very gnarly creatures on this earth that were created for a specific purpose, to be nasty bugs that have to do with death. Like the Bible talks a lot about worms being in hell, like where Jesus said 3 times in the gospel that where their worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched, talking about hell, that, you know, if you look at some kinds of worms, it's not just what you might think of as like a little pink earthworm. There are huge worms in the earth that actually have mouths on the end of them, horrific, horrible looking creatures with teeth, all kinds of segmented legs like a centipede, like horrific worms is what this is actually talking about. Like when somebody dies and goes to hell, they would actually be infested. Like if you would see a body, or if you've ever seen, like a dead body would have, after time has gone on, well, there's all kinds of bugs associated with death, weird, like gnarly looking beetles, and all kinds of crazy worms and maggots. This is what hell is like. Hell isn't, we've heard of it being as fire, that hell is full of fire, but it's also infested. Hell has no gravity, there's nowhere to stand, there's nowhere to lie down, there's nowhere to sit. Hell is confinement, like the Bible describes hell as having her bars about me, or compassed about me forever, that it's like you're in great chains of darkness, the Bible says, where you're chained. It's like you're trapped, or you can never escape. There's many horrible things that the Bible gives us specifics. You know, in the Gospels, Jesus Christ talks more about hell than he does heaven. He's talking about it over and over again. He says, you know, it shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There should be wailing and gnashing of teeth. That's the red letters. That's Jesus speaking, the Gospel of John. He wants us to know that this is what hell is, that we would want to be saved from this. And so when you look at hell in the Bible, you are thankful and glad that we're saved from this, that you don't have to go if Jesus died in your place, so now you don't have to go. But also it should encourage you with motivation to want to share the message of salvation with loved ones or people that you know, or whenever you get the opportunity to share about how Jesus died for us and how to be saved. We should care about this, that this is what other people face. And again, the Bible goes on in Ezekiel talking about that hell is located in the middle of the earth. In Ezekiel 26:20, the Bible says, when I shall bring thee down with them that descend into the pit, with the people of old time, and shall set thee in the low parts of the earth. To be very explicit, very specific. The people of old time that have, in generations past, all the people that have gone on before, that have died and gone to hell, in places desolate of old, with them that go down to the pit, that thou be not inhabited, and I shall set glory in the land of the living. Ezekiel 32:18, Son of man, wait for the multitude of Egypt, and cast them down, even her and the daughters of the famous nations, unto the nether parts of the earth, with them that go down into the pit. The pit that's down, literally below us, is the nether parts of the earth. This is hell. Ezekiel 32 later in 24. There is Elam and all her multitude round about her grave, all of them slain, fallen by the sword, which are gone down, uncircumcised into the nether parts of the earth, which caused their terror in the land of the living. Yet have they borne their shame with them that go down to the pit. So this phrase that comes up in Psalms 55:23, but thou, O God, shalt bring them down into the pit of destruction. The pit of destruction is quite literally a pit. Hell is a bottomless pit of chaotic gravity that's literally under our feet in the middle of the earth, in unimaginable temperatures, thousands and thousands of degrees. What Jesus called a furnace of fire, which is not just some campfire, it is a blazing heat that you would use to melt metal. That's where lava is, under our feet, down in the pit of hell. And it is also destruction. The Bible says in Deuteronomy 32:34, they shall be burnt with hunger, and devoured with burning heat, and with bitter destruction. I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. So he's saying that they're devoured with burning heat and with bitter destruction. They're destroyed in hell. Psalm 73:18. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castest them down into destruction. Proverbs 15:11. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. How much more than the hearts of the children of men? So the Bible says that hell and destruction is before the Lord. So you may have heard that there's false teaching out there that that hell is separation from God, and we know that God is omnipresent, right? God is everywhere. God is all-knowing, and He knows everything. He is everywhere because He's omnipresent. The Bible explains to us. I don't know the exact verse to quote it, but maybe you're familiar with it, where it's like, if I go out to the furthest parts of the sea, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there, the Bible says. Because God is omnipresent, so the people that are in hell, God sees that. The Bible describes in Revelation that the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, worship the beast and receive his mark. Talking about people in hell, that's before the Lamb, that Jesus sees this, that it's happening before God, who's aware of everything. So when people go to hell, it's their fault. We have to remember that the people who go to hell did not have to. It is a choice on everybody's part that nobody has to go. Anybody can be saved that wants to be saved. The only response to God telling us that we need to be saved is to believe in Jesus Christ. And the only reason that somebody would not do so is because they don't believe in Jesus, or they don't believe what God says, so that they would go to hell when they die without forgiveness of their sins. So when people are in hell, it's their fault. God did everything He possibly could. He does not want them to go to hell. He does not want anybody to go to hell. But hell is what it is. It's just within our ability to comprehend and grasp that it is way worse than you can imagine. It is every bit as bad as you might think, and it's beyond that. Because the Bible wants us to be fearful, to fear God, that we would have to be in His judgment, that He has our eternity in His hand. You either believe in the Lord Jesus Christ or you're damned. That's for every single person on the planet. That's for all of us. And God wants us to fear Him, that it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the Lord. The Bible says in Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew 7, verse 13, Jesus talks about this as well, that hell is destruction. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. He's talking about hell, calls it destruction. What is destruction? The definition of destruction from the dictionary is the act of destroying, right? It's to destroy. So what is destroy mean? To reduce to useless fragments, a useless form, or remains, as being rending, burning, or dissolving, or as by, to make useless through rending, or it says burning, injure beyond repair or renewal, demolish, ruin. So the people that go to hell are not wiped out, like it's not like an annihilation where they cease to exist. Because Jesus also talks about hell being an everlasting punishment. It's not just that the fire lasts forever, it's everlasting fire, but it's everlasting punishment, Jesus says elsewhere, that it's perpetual, that people don't burn up. God, in what He shows Himself through pictures in the Old Testament, think of the burning bush of God with Moses in the mountain. That God is first approached in the picture of a bush that has a fire that's not burning the bush is what God wants Moses to see first. This is who God is. God is a great fire. He's a burning fire. I forget, I'm not quoting that right, but the Bible talks about God being a great fire in some way. That's who you can picture. It's a bush that's not being consumed by the fire. That's the way it is with people who go to hell. Because God's wrath is just, and it's being outpoured on those who would be there because they rejected the Lord Jesus. So that's why somebody would go to hell. And just to close, it's destruction, and because those that go to hell, there's fire, there's no rest, there's nowhere to stand, there's no light. We might take for granted somebody's born into this world, and they don't believe in God. When they die, they're never going to see again. They're going to be blind for all of eternity. Some of us might be blind in this life, but we're going to see forever. Some people have vision in this life and they take light for granted, but they're never going to see light again. That hell is a place of darkness. Hell is a place where you have none of your appetites fulfilled. The Bible describes it specifically where it's a place that it says in one of these verses that you're devoured with burning heat and with bitter destruction. It says, shall be burnt with hunger. Burnt. Hunger to the point where you've never experienced before, where somebody's never going to eat again. They still want to eat. You still have the want to feed yourself. That desire is still there, but it will never be quenched again. You're just going to be hungry forever. Just like the Bible says how that hell doesn't have any water, that you're going to be thirsty forever. And the flip side of that is Jesus is always talking about salvation as an everlasting, it's like a well of life that springs up into you. Salvation is like likened unto, water, and it's as easy as taking a drink, and that's how easy it is to be saved. It's you just believe on Jesus, you drink, you eat it's as easy as eating bread. It's as easy as walking through a door. He likens salvation with the water. And water also symbolizes the Holy Spirit in the Bible. But we don't have time to get into all of that. Just the fact that hell does not have, the people are hungry and they're thirsty, but they'll never eat or drink again. Hell is full of fear. Psalm 69:23, well, obviously, but the Bible tells us, let their eyes be darkened that they see not, and make their loins continually to shake. Pour out thine indignation upon them, and let thy wrathful anger take hold on them. It's like you're so scared, you're literally shaking because you're so scared. Think of the great white throne judgment that's coming someday, where God is going to judge all the damned and show them, give them their sentencing and tell them all about all that they did, and they're going to have to stand before God. Beyond fear that you've ever experienced. Isaiah 33:14. The sinners in Zion are afraid. Fearfulness hath surprised the hypocrites. They're actually so scared that they've never experienced before. It's going to be surprise to them because people would mock God, or people would face death without fear, and they're going to be surprised by how bad it is. It's telling about people who just would reject or not learn about God in their life, and so that when they die, it's a surprise. They weren't expecting to actually die and go to hell, but that's where they actually end up. And the Bible talks about all kinds of specifics about hell, but we don't have time to go into all that. I'll skip that over, but I'll read one more verse in 2 Thessalonians 1, verse 9. Who shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power. So it's everlasting destruction, the pit of destruction. So this is something that the Bible is very graphic about. This is something that the Bible, detail after detail, I could go on and on and on and on about the specifics, the way the Bible describes this place, because he wants us to know that it is quite real. It is literally under our feet right now. Mankind has never actually gone into the earth. We've tried to go out and explore space. We've made great ships and gone out of our atmosphere to great lengths out of into space, to the moon, and we've sent satellites really far. But we've explored the ocean depths. We've been to the lowest part of the ocean, even though overall we don't know a lot about the ocean because we've only gone in a few times to the lowest parts. And it takes a long, long process. It's many miles down there, the Mariana Trench, the lowest part of the ocean. But we've never been past just a handful of miles, I forget the number exactly, into the earth. It's a small drill bit that was drilled down. I think it's 7-something miles in that ballpark, or I forget how many miles down it is. It's a little less than a third of the thickness of the crust. Remember, if you split the earth in half and look at all the different layers, it's not even a third of the way down into the crust. That's the furthest we've ever gone into the center of the earth. Nobody's ever gone down there before. When you start to go into the earth, if you've heard about people that go into caves, that it can, all these great harmful, poisons and gases are there, that people would send a canary into a cave, that it's very dangerous when you go down, that the heat rises. If you've ever gone, and when people go and work in gold mines and things, they have to account for that. It gets very hot when you start going into the earth, even just a little bit. So the Bible is telling us that we're actually, when people die, that they would fall and go to hell. They would literally fall through the ground and fall down into the center of the earth. That's where hell is. And people that go to heaven, they literally are brought upwards. The language it uses of up and down, of heaven being up and hell being down, is literal. The hell is below our feet, in the pit of destruction. So when we learn about hell, we can be thankful, and we should want to learn about how to give the gospel to other people, how to share the simple salvation that you just believe on Jesus Christ and your sins are forgiven. People go to hell to pay for their sins. They don't have to if they have them paid for already by Jesus. You just believe in what he did, his death on the cross, his resurrection, and it's that easy and anybody can be saved. And we thank God for that, and thanks be unto God for his unspeakable gift. And we'll end with a prayer. Lord, we just praise you, Lord, for how great and grand you are, the great creator of the world. And Lord, we trust you. We know that you are worthy, Lord, and that you created hell for a reason, that you're just, Lord. We thank you so much that if it was fair, everyone would go to hell. But we thank you that you're merciful, that you saved us, Lord, when you didn't have to. Thank you for saving us from hell, Lord. Thank you for making a way out of salvation. We praise you for that, Lord. We just want to give you praise for who you are and for how great you are, Lord, that we can trust you, Lord, that your word is great. And thank you for teaching us about these things, Lord, that we know that you do so because you care about us, Lord. And we praise you, Lord, for who you are in Jesus' mighty name.